We who are strong have an obligation to bear with the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves. Let each of us please his neighbor for his good, to build him up. Romans 15, verses 1 and 2. Hello, ladies. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. I hope you get a lot done while you listen today. But before you go to do your work, I have a teacup to show you. Kind of goes with the background in this dress, and it's red. And I just feel bold like red today. I usually get these cups out at Christmas, but the color just appealed to me today, and I have a very red face because we are in the hottest time of the year. I believe this is probably the hottest day of the year, and I'm really feeling it. I feel rather wilted, but I wanted to had so many ideas today. I wanted to get on and talk to you a little bit about life at home, and I would start out with appearance. And I today didn't do too well, so I had to start over in the afternoon and really get dressed and get ready to have some kind of a day. And I started out by getting my cup of tea, doing a little walkabout outside, and being really grateful for just the smallest little things, and just looking at small things and enjoying them to the fullest, and breathing. I talked to you before about breathing, how important it is to breathe the right way, not just to breathe shallowly up in here, and how that can damage your whole body. And you can go to a breathing therapist on YouTube and learn more about this. There are physical therapists that teach it. That would be something you could learn. And I believe that right now in these times is a great time to learn something every day or every week. I have signed up for a few online classes, and I have found some things that I like that I can watch and learn from. And I found a cooking class, and I found an exercise class, and I found instructions for several different things, art and for singing, and just learning about different things that I have always wanted to have time to do and either didn't have the time or the money. So it's nice to find some things that don't cost anything on the web and learn from them. Now today I would like to also say that if you get dressed up and you've had a hard time during the day or the day before, sometimes it can demoralize you. Sometimes it can make you just feel immobilized, like you really don't want to get up and get dressed. You don't feel worthy. You don't feel maybe something happened the day before that really crushed you. And this is the way it is, at home. A lot of people don't realize we have our failures too, and we are disappointed in ourselves in many different ways, or maybe somebody in the family is giving us a little bit of a hard time. And that's why I read that scripture that said that we ought to build one another up. And if you've got a family and if there's people around living with you, all you're dwelling together, then it needs to be made clear that there won't be any criticism. That's not part of your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is that you build one another up. And that should be made very clear as the children get older, or if there is someone that is living with you. Maybe you have one of your children and their family has come for a little while, or have had to move in because of housing or something like that. It needs to be made clear that no one decides to build a case against someone else, that everyone is there to encourage one another and build one another up, because that's the only way it'll work. And that was written to the church. So your home is, it came before the church. Man was created before the church, and your home is your own little unit of the church. And so everyone ought to remember they're all brothers and sisters in Christ and build one another up. So your appearance really helps. If you could, you actually build one another up by having a good appearance. It shows respect to the family. It shows respect to those around you. And today I didn't get very much done because I was told to go out and get some essentials that we desperately needed, and I had to go and get some things. And I'd like to report on that after a while, but I wanted to give you some reason to be happy first, as it is not pleasant sometimes out there in that world. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the things you can do at home. And we can look nice at home. Things you can do at home. Look nice at home. This takes a while too. It isn't anymore. It is no longer get up, get dressed, and rush out the door and go somewhere. because now most people are having to stay at home for some reason or other. So let's see what all you can do at home. And the beauty of it now is that you can take your time. So you can look well at home. You can clean your home. You can clean up after yourself. You can take care of your car. You can clean your car. Last year I detailed my car inside and out. Every little nook and cranny in there was clean. It looked like a new car inside. And the other things that you can do is self-improvement. You can work on a schedule of self-improvement for yourself. How would you like to change? How would you like to change your attitude? How would you like to change the way you speak? How would you like to change how you read aloud? How would you, just different things you can do, personal improvement. What about your health? What about your hair? I know some people have said they've been under so much stress, probably this adrenaline fatigue that I was talking about, and losing their hair. And so in an effort to restore that, we learn all we can about restoring our health and personal improvement. Another thing that we can do is improve our property, that is around us. We can clean everything. We can improve everything. We can preserve it by looking after it. We can get better at everything. We can iron our clothes. And I remember growing up, we still had the flat iron. You know, I lived before the electric iron. We still had the iron that you heated on top of the cook stove. And I remember what a thrill it was to learn to iron things, because it made them so beautiful and they looked brand new. And you can write a story. Have you ever thought about some of the things we read, you know, that don't turn out quite as like we would have liked it? How about writing your own story? I think that's a lot of fun. You could even start a blog, and it can be your fiction, be your story. And the other thing I wanted to say about all of that is, don't wait for life out there to settle down. Don't wait for the world to settle down, because it's not going to do that. It might, some things might change, but generally it's going to stay in an upheaval as long as there are people who are going against God's will and going against His peace. They're going to keep it in an upheaval just to make you as miserable as they possibly can. And so at home, that's the only place right now, before they start, in case they start invading the home right now is the only place of relaxation, refreshment, and recreation, and also of creativity. So I'm learning some new things, and I hope that you are too. I got out my letter writing equipment and decided to start writing letters and go back to my newsletter, which I've done for a few weeks. And I noticed a lot of other ladies are writing newsletters and discovering the great fulfillment in it. It's just one page, and they write little sections on it, and said that they really, really enjoyed that. And they write about their discoveries, about anything, about life, their learning experiences. And I think these are going to be really interesting, like what were those albums called in the old days, where they would just copy verses from things? Were they common books or something like that? And they were actually quite used up until, I guess, the last anyone ever saw any was probably the 1940s or 50s. Commonplace books is what they were called. And that's what these newsletters are like. They're like commonplace newsletters, just a little dip in the dab of different verse and different things from places that they have learned. And so I discussed last video that we eat 3 times a day usually. So why not pray 3 times a day, exercise 3 times a day, walk 3 times a day, and take care of your appearance. Check your appearance and just check it 3 times a day, and do something for others, and do all these things 3 times a day, maybe in smaller doses, instead of cramming it all in at the beginning of the day. And I'm going to be practicing that to see if I have more peace and maybe even a little more stamina at the end of the day. And I'm not sure I'll get as much housework done, but I'm going to try. Now, the thing that I just read to you about building one another up, this is going to be connected to what how people are around us. And sometimes you'll get someone who actually doesn't know that they're running somebody down, and they have to be reminded. And if they are in your care or in your house, it doesn't hurt to gently remind them that around here we build one another up. So think of something to say that would help them succeed. And so that was the way my family grew up. We weren't constantly screaming and yelling at everybody. We were trying to build them up. I would like to share with you some bad advice that I got over the years, just to prevent you from using it. And it just really wasn't even workable, and it wasn't scriptural. But someone told me once that if you, and I've been a preacher's wife all these years, so I was told by other people that, if you want to really be successful with people, with the public and with people in the church, then if you find someone who is really, really against you, seems to be triggered by everything you say and wants to argue back all the time, or whenever they see you anywhere, they make a beeline for you and want to pull out information from you, want to go fishing is what I call information, to find out if there's any failure in any part of your life with your family or your home or anything like that. And I was told, and so my instinct was, my goodness, I'm not going to give them any fuel. I'm not going to show up to the events that they are going to be at, because I just don't need that. And it is very stressful to be around those kind of people. And that was my instinct, to keep away from them so they wouldn't have anything to attack. And so what I was told, and this is what I think was very bad advice, I was told, oh no, with those kind of people, you just walk right up to them and you say hello, and you just act like, hail fellow, well met, and you just overwhelm them, and then you're real nice, because then you disprove any of the bad things that they think about you. But some people can carry that off, but I couldn't, because what I found was that some people have no ideas of their own. They have no thoughts of their own. They have nothing to say that is interesting or unique of their own. They wait until their target says something, and then they argue it back. They never have an idea of their own. I mean, this goes on in the home, too. There might be someone that wants to do something, decides to do it, and someone else will block them. And it won't be for any good reason except that, and the other person never thought of it, or the other person never wants to do anything. But the minute somebody else wants to do something, they have to figure out a way to fight against it. That's just the way they operate. Well, these people, every once in a while, there'll be somebody who never has anything to say to you until you say something, and then they block it, or they diss it, or they discourage you from it, or they cause enough trouble that you can't do something. And so I discovered that it wasn't always wise to be around these people, because just your very existence and appearance there in whatever setting it is, with socially with these kind of people, tends to enrage them, tends to anger them, tends to trigger them. So you don't even have to say anything, and they will say something caustic to you, or they're watching you. They constantly say things that are not building you up, but pulling you down. And so what I have found, I think everybody has to find their own comfort zone. I have a comfort zone, yes. They have to find their own comfort zone. I believe in comfort zone, and I push it. I think everyone should have a comfort zone, and if they find their own comfort zone and they feel better staying home, I think that they should. And I wish over the years I had not listened to this bad advice, because sometimes I think my house, my family, they all suffered from it, because I'd just come home with the jitters. I would just be tense and upset, and children always know. They always know when you're holding them, when you're just a little tense, or even when you're holding their hand, or even when you've got your arm around them, if you have had some kind of troubles. And in the olden days, I was reading about some of these ancient civilizations not long ago that protected women from unnecessary war and stress, and they were not expected to go out into the fray and fight a war, and because it would upset their bodies, and they couldn't function as wives, mothers, and they had a hard time with their health, and so they were protected from that. And so today I'm going to read a little bit from the New World History and Geography, but first I'm going to read from Mcguffy's Fourth Reader. Now, I if you're going to get something like this, get the one that was published by Christian Liberty, because what it did is see, this is an eclectic reader, and it was not written with a completely Christian viewpoint, although there were lots of Bible in it, and there was lots of Christian writings in it, and really good values and good morals in it. Every now and then there'd be a story about something that was more mythical, and the Christian Liberty and some of the Christian editions of the Mcguffy readers would take out some of that. So I would like to read to you a little bit about, and this is my you're being homeschooled right now, is subvocals and aspirates. And I wanted to talk to you about articulation, elementary sounds, and I need to learn this too. I speak too fast sometimes. Articulation, these are called the elementary sounds. I asked a teacher once what was articulation, elementary sound, vocals, subvocals, and aspirates, and she'd never heard of them. So I know that it's a lot of it's eye-opening to go into the old readers that were written in 1837. There are plenty of reprints now. The Mcguffy's Fourth Eclectic Reader. Okay, articulation is the utterance of the elementary sounds of a language and of their combinations. An elementary sound is a simple, distinct sound made by the organs of speech. The elementary sounds of the English language are divided into vocals, subvocals, and aspirates. Vocals are those sounds which consist of a pure tone only. They are the most prominent elements of speech. A diphthong is a union of two vocals, commencing with one and ending with the other. Subvocals are the sounds in which the vocalized breath is more or less obstructed. They have the words over here, so I'll tell you what they are, okay? Vocals. Let the mouth be open and the teeth, tongue, and palate in their proper position. Pronounce the word in the chart forcibly and with the falling inflection and the rising inflection several times in succession. Then drop the subvocal or aspirate sounds which precede and follow the vocal and repeat the vocals alone. Can you imagine having to learn all this in order to be an orator or public speaker, or just to speak in, when you're like 12 years old? Can you imagine? This is hard. So long vocals. Hair, far, pass, fall, eve, pine, no, tube, burn, cool. Short vocals. Mat, met, it, hot, us, and book. In this table, the short sounds, except you, are nearly or quite the same in quality as the long sounds. The difference consists chiefly in quantity. As a rule, the long vocal should be prolonged with a full utterance, but the short vocal should be uttered sharply and almost explosively. Okay, let's say the long vocals, and that is pass, fall, pine, cool. Okay, so the short vocals are met, mat, it, hot, us, and book. Well, yes, you would say those more slowly. You wouldn't say book, you'd say book, but you would say cool. It's very cool today. And so these are interesting. They don't use these anymore, but I find them interesting. Diphthongs. Oi, as in coin. Ow as in noun or now. Subvocals and aspirates. Directions for articulation. Pronounce distinctly and forcibly several times in succession words in which these sounds occur as elements. Then drop the other sounds and repeat the subvocals and aspirates alone. Oh my goodness. These look hard. So the subvocals are mill, him, tin, and it would take me a while to even figure this out myself. We did try to do these, but the language has changed so much in the way that we connect our words that we weren't able to use it all, because they spoke the words so clipped and distinctly, and we don't do that quite so much anymore. I don't think anyone would understand us if we did. So ladies, I have one more thing to read to you, and then I'm going to say goodbye, and this is going to be a very short a very short lesson today. I'm reading from the New World, History and Geography. And so I wanted to go through and show you the difference between communism and freedom, because they had something here for the students. And these students were very young, like 4th and 5th grade, and they learned to identify the difference between freedom and communism, and what the danger of communism is, and how communism actually goes against God's word, because he said proclaim liberty throughout the land, and it imposes on your liberty. Now today I saw something really interesting, and I don't want to bring the war in here, but sometimes they won't let you not pay attention to their war. And I remember a story I read years ago, and I can't even think of what it was. It became a movie later on, and it was about a young man that just wanted to practice medicine, and it was done during the days of the when the communist revolt came upon Europe, and he didn't want any part of it, and he didn't want to take sides. He just wanted to operate on people. And he was asked by this general of the Communist Party, well, what kind of life do you want? What do you want? Because they were trying to get him to join them. He said, I just want to live. Just live. Just leave me alone and let me live. That's all. He said, I just want to live. And they didn't think that was too bright, because it wasn't ambitious. He just wanted to grow potatoes on a farm and have a little place to be a country doctor. And then there was another. So I'm saying they're not going to let us ignore the war, and they're just not going to let us. They're going to keep imposing stricter and stricter rules on us till we can't hardly move, even in our own homes, and there will be rules for that too, and it's just not very healthy. So that's why I wanted to read this to you, and also to remember that as long as we build one another up, they can't actually destroy us. They can't get us down. But I saw something really interesting today. First, I want to tell you about the other story was in The Sound of Music. And if you remember when the Von Trapp family was trying to leave, and they were startled by this boyfriend of the oldest daughter. And he had joined the enemy. He had joined the enemy, and he was in their military, and he saw them trying to escape. And they knew him. He was a friend of theirs. He'd been in their home. But the warmth in his face had just turned absolutely cold. He was just like a distant character, like he had his mind invaded. He gave them the coldest look, and they said, please, please let us go. And at the last minute, of course, he'd been so indoctrinated and so well trained by this invading military that he yelled for his superior to come. He said, they're here, they're here. And so I wanted to bring that out to you, because we have a lot of hay trucks going by right now. I wanted to bring that out to you because today I saw something very interesting. Now, in this little town that I live near, I have been shopping here maybe 30 years. I don't know. But the stores, the small stores, hire the locals that live in that area, and that makes sense. And you get to know them, and they know you. They know where you live. They know what church you go to. You know them. And they're always understanding and kind, and they are the cashiers, and they are the people that work in the stores, the employees. And you just get to know them, and they get used to seeing you, and no problem. You just, but today was really interesting because I went into one of the familiar stores and was in there, and there was no one there that I recognized except for one young man. And this young man was one that really liked us, always talked to us when we were in there, and he lived nearby, and we kind of knew who he was. And he was as cold as this Rolf was in this movie, The Sound of Music. And his eyes, you could see it in his eyes, he was totally taken over by something, but he was not congenial to us. He wasn't kind to us. He He did not show any recognition. He did not show any favor to us. We don't expect any favor, but we always laugh a little bit. We always say, have a good day. Hope you do well today. Say hi to your mom, or something like that, to these people. But the rest of them we didn't even recognize, and they were all stony cold too. I mean, they were like military. They were stone cold. They were regulating the customers, making them stand in a line going one way with the arrow going the other way, and then correcting them if they went the wrong way down the aisles. And we didn't even know these people. And what had happened, I suspect, I've seen this and read about this before, is in order to enforce rules, a store will have to get rid of the staff that's been there a long, long time and transfer them to another branch of their store. And that way it doesn't bother them to boss the customer around or to be rude to the customer, because they're not attached. They're not in any way, and they don't have to show any warmth to them. Or somebody else came in, some other group came in. I'm not sure what group that was, but we did not recognize any of them, and they were extremely harsh to us and treated us like, treated all the customers like enemies, like little children too. And, just like they were ordering them around, and the shopping was so unpleasant. And we had a few things to get, but it traumatized me so bad. I said, well, I can't stay, so I just left, and I didn't get anything. So, and then we're finding this more and more, and it reminded me of that scene, especially this young man that knew us so well that acted like he didn't recognize us. Because what has happened, I think, is and then they were saying, I said, what's happened? Everybody's so rude and cold. And one person said, well, we're doing what we're ordered to do. We've been ordered to do this. I thought that was strange. So I wanted to read these things because there were comparisons of communism, and that was how come that's the reason my children will recognize it. And so in a Christian school book, we'll see both sides of it. We will see both sides. We'll see both sides and the results and the fruits of both sides of government. So Americans enjoy the right to worship God in one's own way. Now, as you know, each state has attempted to shut churches down, and now to some of the ones that didn't shut down, they are sending the state has got people going around looking to see if these churches are still closed or if there's anybody going there on Sunday. So that's a little bit strange. This is the most important right guaranteed to Americans by the Constitution. All other American freedoms are based on the freedom to worship God. Interesting. In communist countries, the communists say there is no God. Many people in communist countries have been put in jail for teaching the Bible. Communists do not even allow parents to teach their own children about God. Because communists do not believe in God, they do not give religious freedom. Now, in some places, they will allow people to go to church, but it has to be a state church. To them, the state is all important, and therefore God is not necessary. The communist system denies people many of the freedoms that are given Americans by our Constitution. Now, just because we have a Constitution sitting there doesn't mean we're going to have the freedoms. It has to be exercised and enacted, and sometimes the state will overstep itself, and the Americans have to step out and just say, no, I'm not going to do that if it's not right. And that's what we have done with church and with many other things. The right to free speech and press. Americans enjoy the right to free speech and press. Newspapers, televisions, and radio stations in the United States are free to report the news as they see it and to make their comments on it. Americans can say they believe without fear of punishment. Say what they believe without fear of punishment. With freedom of speech goes a great responsibility to think pure thoughts and speak and write true words. Freedom of speech and press tends to give people self-respect, and it gives them a chance to express their views. And so, Christians naturally, although they respect the news reports, we have caught so many so-called media experts who have spun the truth, not reported things properly, and they have been called out on it, and they know it, and they're quick to put down the truth. And that's one reason why I am very suspicious of anything that the media says, because we've seen them spin something in order to create a belief. In communist countries, the communists control all the newspapers, televisions, and radios in the countries in which they rule. Newsmen cannot report the news as it happens. They can only tell the communist government's view of the news. Much news about good happenings in free countries and bad happenings in communist world is withheld from the people. People are told by the government how to think and what to read and listen to. The government assumes the responsibility of thinking for the people. Now, if you recall, there was a news media, a member of the press, and she's the daughter of someone named Brzezinski who came to the U.S. He was some kind of a diplomat or something, and she's the daughter of his, and she made the comment, and you can still find it on YouTube, where she said, our job is to tell the American people how to think and what to think. And I think she'd like that to go away, but that is how the press thinks, and particularly the left press. Americans enjoy the right to petition for grievances in fair and honest judgment. If Americans think they have been wronged or something in the government needs to be changed, they can put their case to judges and expect to have a fair hearing. And that's what people are starting to wake up and do. They can use this system. They can use this system in their own case, and a lot of people are. In communist countries, the benefit of the state is more important than the fair treatment of individuals. People enslaved by communism live in fear that the state will treat them harshly no matter how they behave. You know, when I was in that store today, that's what those employees looked like. They had a stiffness about them and a fear in their eyes. And the way they were talking to the customers was like that look that Rolf had in his eyes when he yelled, "They're here," you know, when he was betraying them. They just looked like they were so glazed over with communism or Marxism. There was something just so strange about it all, and they were not at all careful about the customer at all. And one of the big traits of a free country is their shopping. It's supposed to be enjoyable. The company that is created, but probably started by a family, becomes big because they're kind and good, and they have good products. And they always try to make the customer comfortable in their stores because they want them to come back, and they will make a big profit if these people can be persuaded to spend more money. And you don't want to go back to a store where you've been made miserable. You don't want to go back there. And so they will not make money if they're not good to the customer. And this store that I was in today had the atmosphere had changed completely. And so the Americans enjoy the right to privacy in our homes. In the United States, a man's home is his castle, and no one can legally interfere with the responsibility parents have to care for their family the way they believe is best. This freedom causes parents to take responsibility for their own affairs. Families in communist-controlled countries have very little privacy. The communists can go into their homes at any time to make sure they are not listening to a non-communist radio broadcast. Do you remember in the colonies in the early days that foreign soldiers could come in and they could quarter, it's called quartering, they could quarter inside of anybody's house just because they wanted to. And the colonists put a stop to it because they could impose on any family they wanted to, and you had to let the soldier stay there. The government takes the responsibility for how children are reared, and the parents often give up trying to help their children to do right. Americans enjoy the right to contract about our affairs. Americans can take charge of their own affairs. They can enter into legal agreements with other individuals or companies in which both parties are required to keep their side of the bargain. Americans know that if they handle their affairs wisely, they will do well. If they handle their affairs unwisely, they will do poorly. And one of the arguments for communism is that you won't have to make a mistake because communists have so many rules that you can't fail. And that's the big attraction. Some people just don't want to develop good judgment. They don't want to develop the experience, and they don't want to ever fail. But there's never been a successful business that did not fail at one time or other. And in any of us, we have picked ourselves up. I mean, when I draw a picture or make a painting, I fail many times before I get it right. And it's the same in anything that you endeavor to do. The first meal you cook might not be exactly what you wanted, but you don't give up just because it didn't turn out right. You just keep trying. And this is one thing that's just very, very typical of Americans. It says, Americans usually say, what can I do to make things better? And this is what we're taught as children at home. Before we even knew we were Americans, our parents were teaching us, when you see that something needs to be fixed, you fix it. You ask, what can I do for you? Is there anything you need for me to do? And this was the way we were brought up, and this is how we love our neighbors as ourselves. We look for things that need to be done. What can I do? And what can I do to fix things? In communist countries, citizens are not allowed to take charge of their own affairs. The government is in charge of everything. Since the people are not allowed to have any responsibility for what they do or how they do it, they often feel they have no reason to try to do their best. What I do is not important, they think. The government is the only thing that matters. The government is the only thing that matters. And it's interesting that when a person decides they're just going to please the government, that government is not going to pay you back. They are not going to reward you. You are not, because when they're finished using you, you're finished. They are not interested in how good you were and how well you performed for the government, because they will replace you. The right to own private property. Many Americans have their own homes. Many who do not are working hard so they can someday afford to buy a home. Some Americans own industries and large businesses. Others own small businesses. We depend on these business owners for many of the goods and services that we need, and they depend on us for business. They try hard to have better products and services than other companies, so we will choose them for our business. This is called the free enterprise system. Under the free enterprise system, people work harder than they would under the communist system because they know their work will bring them a reward. When the Communist Party takes over a country, it takes people's homes, farms, businesses, factories away from them and forces the people to work for the government. And this is a big concern right now because some of the states that have the Marxist governors are taking over the most successful businesses. They don't seem to bother too much with the small businesses, but they will kind of financially partner a very large and profitable business, and it'll become a state business. The party takes over the country. It takes over the farms, the businesses, the factories, and forces the people to work for the government. The leaders of the Communist Party are the only people in communist countries who have nice houses and luxury possessions. Most other people live in run-down apartments that are owned by the government. Many times, two families have to live together in just one tiny room, and often several families have to share a kitchen. According to communist teaching, all property should be held in common, and there should not be any private property. And I've heard that from, I'm out here in the more liberal area of the states and in the West, and I've heard students at the university say that there shouldn't be money and there shouldn't be property, and everybody's going to be equal. But what happens is everybody's equally miserable. Americans enjoy the right to move about freely at home or abroad. Americans have great freedom in traveling within the United States. We don't have to have a passport. We don't have to have any kind of paper. We just usually stop at the border and get our picture taken with a sign saying you're entering Idaho, and then we move on. And then there's a little tourist stop there where you can go and get brochures and maps and things. And so we roam freely between states. But you see where they're stopping that now is the state is making one last push for communism. They want it so bad that now you cannot cross a border. It just happened just about last month or the month before. You cannot cross a state border. We've always been able to cross state borders. You cannot cross a state border unless you are quarantine yourself for 2 weeks or something. Well, then they closed all the motels and hotels and bed and breakfasts and places to stay, so you can't really quarantine yourself for 2 weeks. Where are you going to stay? In your car? And then they close the campgrounds. I mean, it's just very strange. So people that know the difference between communism and the freedom the Bible talks about, God wants his people to be free so that the gospel can be spread, and God wants his people to be free so that they can live happily, abundantly, and glorify him and influence others to love him and his blessings too. But what communism does is it hides all of the blessings of God and hides his power and diminishes people's love for God and shut down the churches, etc. In communist countries, people have to get permission from the Communist Party to move from one place to another, and only rarely are they allowed to travel outside the country. Many thousands have tried to leave these countries, but the communists force them to stay. The people are like prisoners without a jail. Americans enjoy the right to habeas corpus, without excessive bail. It means no one can take an American away to jail without a written order signed by the right official, and no American citizen may be kept in jail for an excessive amount of time before he has been proven guilty of something. Americans may pay a reasonable fee for release from jail before their trial for a crime, if they are not endangering society. People controlled by communism live in fear that they may be taken to jail at any time for no reason. They are sometimes kept in jail for years without any explanation. Sometimes they are put in insane asylums for preaching the gospel or criticizing their government. Americans enjoy the right to trial by jury. A person is innocent until proven guilty. In America, every caution is taken to make sure a person is not punished for a crime he did not commit. An American accused of a crime has the right to be tried by other American citizens like himself, who will be more likely to understand him than a government-appointed official would be. An American is not responsible to prove his innocence. His accusers are responsible to prove his guilt. Now, this is what concerns me. A jury of our peers would be somebody like, if I were accused of something, I would pick farmers around me. But if the state gets to them first and starts to indoctrinate them, they become like these people in the store with this hardline Marxist communist look in their eyes. You know that they've got to, you've got to walk on a line, and you've got to stand a certain way, and you've got to address everybody a certain way, and they don't treat you like people anymore. What if all your jury of your peers was taken over like that? You wouldn't have much of a chance. Communists do not give people the right to trial by a jury. Often one man will decide whether a person is guilty. If there is a jury, the government says who will be on the jury. A person accused by the state is assumed to be guilty unless he can prove he is innocent. Even then, he may be punished. The Communist Party bosses are cruel dictators who rule the people by brutal force. Communists have slave labor camps, and they often torture their prisoners in terrible ways to get them to confess to crimes they did not commit. If anybody found that movie China Cry with the story of Nora Lamb in it, remember she was taken to prison, and she was pregnant, and she was taken to prison because she had committed the crime of worshiping God on Sunday with other Christians, and she would not sanction the communist government. See, they won't let you just not be involved. If you just want to be quiet and you want to go home and take care of your children, and you want to just, grow some vegetables, and you really aren't political, they won't let you. You have to show loyalty to them. If a communist boss does not like a person, he will make up crimes to accuse the person. Thus, the innocent people are punished. Americans enjoy the right to free elections and personal secret ballots. That is why one reason why I don't like to, people will just say, well, who did you vote for? I said, well, it's a secret. It's a secret ballot. And you can tell by the way I live and the way I talk who I voted for, but generally we don't go around telling each other who we voted for. It's a secret. It's like you don't tell people how much money you make or how much money you have in the bank or how much you paid for something. It's private. Americans have the privilege and responsibility to vote for their leaders. To keep others from dictating how to vote, voting is done in such a way that no one can see how a person votes. And that's one reason we don't like the mail-in vote, is they get set in a box at this drop-off, and we've dropped ours off there because we have mail-in voting in Oregon, and it was done without our permission. It was done without our vote. It was just all of a sudden, and we used to vote over at the church building the years that for the voting, and we would set all the tables up, and they had the papers and the pencils, and people would come in and have to show their ID and everything, and that stopped. We used to see everybody then too, everybody in the community that we hadn't seen in a while. There is voting in some communist countries, but people can only vote for communists, and usually they have only one communist to vote for. The Communist Party boss, you see, they will brag, even here in our state, they will brag that Kate Brown got 85% of the vote, but the trouble is that they threw out a lot of votes because they didn't think the line was just perfectly straight across, or that the votes were left in the box and then they showed up later and it's too late. And I have heard of people throwing out votes too. They are unscrupulous people that go and collect the votes. And usually they have only one communist to vote for. The Communist Party bosses watch the people closely as they vote and punish them if they do not vote with the right way. In some communist countries, elections are not held at all. So this is something to think about, and tomorrow, or in one of the future videos, I'm going to read you the Declaration of Independence and the preamble to the Constitution and some other things. And so, ladies, I hope you had a good time, and I was just reading that because I was homeschooling you, and it's nice to have something to listen to while you wash dishes that's got a little bit of meat to it and isn't entirely fluff. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will try to read more of that for you later. The light is fading, the evening is here, and my voice is croaking. My skin is very red from it being so hot here today. So, ladies, I'll see you next time I come. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your prayers. I pray for you, too. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.